Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Govinda Radha Govinda Radhe Jaya Jagannath Jaya Jagannath Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadra Jaya Gauranitai 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 Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parapajik Acharya Asatura Satashi Shimai ISKCON BBT Founder Charles Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitya-lila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem se Kahosh Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyamakunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Brajamohanam Ki Jai Shri Navadip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Shri Lord Chal Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Shrimati Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai The most beautiful worship Shri Shri Radha Govinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Ki Jai Shri Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Shri Gaur-Nitai Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakta-vrinda Ki Jai, going back to home, back to Godhead Ki Jai, ISKCON New York Yatra Ki Jai, Brihad Mridanga Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai, International Food for Life Transcendental Prasadam Distribution Ki Jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, Nittai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Deving Saraswatim Vyāsam Tato Jayam Hatirayat. Before reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, let us offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Lord Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyāsa Deva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, who is the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashtapreshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. By regularly attending the Srimad Bhagavatam class and by rendering service unto the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving devotional service unto the personality of Godhead, whose worship with transcendental songs becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're continuing our reading from the fourth canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is entitled Creation of the Fourth Order. We're in chapter 14, the story of King Vena, and today's text is 29. Maitreya uvāca itthaṁ viparyaya-matiḥ pāpīyān utpathaṁ gataḥ anunīyamānas tad-yācñāṁ na cakre bhraṣṭa-maṅgalaḥ. Maitreya uvāca itthaṁ viparyaya-matiḥ pāpīyān utpathaṁ gataḥ anunīyamānas tad-yācñāṁ na cakre bhraṣṭa-maṅgalaḥ. Maitreya uvāca itthaṁ viparyaya-matiḥ pāpīyān utpathaṁ gataḥ anunīyamānas tad-yācñāṁ na cakre bhraṣṭa-maṅgalaḥ. Please chant. Maitreya uvāca itthaṁ viparyaya-matiḥ pāpīyān utpathaṁ gataḥ anunīyamānas tad-yācñāṁ na cakre bhraṣṭa-maṅgalaḥ. Maitreya uvāca itthaṁ viparyaya-matiḥ pāpīyān utpathaṁ gataḥ anunīyamānas tad-yācñāṁ na cakre bhraṣṭa-maṅgalaḥ. Maitreya uvāca Maitreya uvāca itthaṁ viparyaya-matiḥ pāpīyān utpathaṁ gataḥ anunīyamānas tad-yācñāṁ na cakre bhraṣṭa-maṅgalaḥ. Vaishnavins. Maitreya uvāca itthaṁ viparyaya-matiḥ pāpīyān utpathaṁ gataḥ anunīyamānas tad-yācñāṁ na cakre bhraṣṭa-maṅgalaḥ. Maitreya uvāca itthaṁ viparyaya-matiḥ pāpīyān utpathaṁ gataḥ anunīyamānas tad-yācñāṁ na cakre bhraṣṭa-maṅgalaḥ. So, synonyms. Maitreya uvāca. Maitreya said, itthaṁ, thus, viparyaya-matiḥ, one who has developed perverse intelligence. Pāpīyān, most sinful. Utpatham, from the right path. Gataḥ, having gone. Anunīyamānaḥ, being offered all respect. Tat-yācñāṁ, the request of the sages. Na, not. Cakre, accepted. Phrashta, bereft of. Maṅgalaḥ, all good fortune. Srila Prabhupada's translation for this verse. The great sage Maitreya continued, thus the king, who became unintelligent due to his sinful life and deviation from the right path, became actually bereft of all good fortune. He could not accept the requests of the great sages, which the sages put before him with great respect, and therefore he was condemned. Please repeat. The great sage Maitreya continued, thus the king, who became unintelligent due to his sinful life and deviation from the right path, became actually bereft of all good fortune. He could not accept the requests of the great sages, which the sages put before him with great respect, and therefore he was condemned. Srila Prabhupada's Purport. The demons certainly cannot have any faith in the words of authorities. In fact, they are always disrespectful to authorities. They manufacture their own religious principles and disobey great personalities like Vyāsa, Nārada, and even the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Kṛṣṇa. As soon as one disobeys authority, he immediately becomes very sinful and loses his good fortune. The king was so puffed up and impudent that he dared disrespect the great saintly personalities, and this brought him ruination. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale, Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamine Namaste, Saraswati Deve, Gauravani Pracharane, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Devshtarane. Om Agyana Timarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya, Chakshur Unmilitam Jena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtang Shnapitang Jena Bhutale, Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam, Vandeyahang Shri Guru Shri Utpathaṁ Shri Gurun Vaishyavangsha, Shri Rupam Sagadatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tang Sajivam, Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Kṛṣṇa Chaitanya Devam, Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitangsha. Hey Kṛṣṇa Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namosate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishavanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhuve Evacha Patitanang Pavinebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So on at least one occasion, Srila Prabhupada, devotees were doing like you're all doing here right now. You're making sweets and you're doing different things, but they were being noisy, so Prabhupada told them to stop. But you all are very quiet, so please continue. Go on with your nice Seda. Now, how many of you have heard the story Jungle Kirai? It's from the Hitopadesha, I think, originally. So the story goes that there was one jackal. Everybody knows what is a jackal? Yeah. So the jackal, you can see whenever there's like a lion kill, the jackals are hanging around just waiting to get some scraps. But the lions chase them away. They don't even bother chasing them because they're so insignificant. So jackal is an insignificant animal as far as the bigger animals are concerned. So this jackal, he was very hungry, wandering from place to place, village to village, looking for something to eat. So finally, the dark moon night came, and he's wandering, and he stumbles into a vat of dye. Now, you know, in India is famous for bright colors, especially like in Rajasthan, in bright purple, bright blue, bright colors. So, you know, they make their dyes from minerals, and the pot of dye was out in the open, but it was dark night, so this jackal, he flipped into this pot of dye. Wasn't something to eat, so he wasn't concerned, so he just kept going. So the next day, sun came up, and he noticed that all the animals are staring at him, as if he's not the usual jackal. Instead of chasing him away, so he looked into a little pond of water, and he saw that his color was changed. Now he was blue. So the animals, they didn't recognize him. So he took advantage. Jackals are very clever. So he took advantage, and he declared, I am now the king. Bring me this, bring me that. And all the animals, they didn't recognize that he's just a jackal. So they were bringing him whatever he wanted. And he was enjoying his new position as king. But eventually, one day, the rains came. He got wet. All the blue color was gone. But he didn't realize. So the next day, he's again ordering everybody, bring me this. And they was, get out of here, you jackal. So this is what's going on here in the story of Veda. Some or other, by the mercy of the Brahmanas, he was put into this position as being the king, even though he did not deserve the position. But he became puffed up, as Prabhupada said here. He disobeyed the authorities. He was so puffed up and impotent that he dared disrespect great saintly persons. That's like the rain coming on the jackal and So now his reign of disrespect is coming to an end. And this is not surprising, because in the material world, all of us conditioned souls that are here, of course, I don't mean to insult anybody who's no longer or has never been a conditioned soul, but those who are conditioned souls, they have this false ego, false pride, want to take Krishna's position. Itthaṁ dvesha samuttena dvandva mohena bharata. Everybody's born into this world, Krishna says, driven by desire and hate. Desire to become Krishna, to be number one, tell everybody else what to do. And hatred of Krishna, because ultimately we cannot take that position. So Ben is in that situation. He has become puffed up because now he's in charge. But being in charge, being the controller as a conditioned soul is a temporary position. Yes, by the power of the brahmanas or by power of austerity, whatever, one can rise up to a seemingly high position, but it doesn't last. Ultimately, it's taken away because it's a false position. Now, saintly persons, we know, titikshava karunika. They're tolerant and they're merciful. Prabhupada said, we have to tolerate. Speaking of himself, obviously, when he said we, some of us may have foolishly included ourselves in that we, but Prabhupada is talking about himself, that we have to tolerate so many ignorant persons while we're preaching. We have to tolerate, Prabhupada said, so many ignorant persons who unnecessarily impede the Krishna consciousness, try to impede the Krishna consciousness movement, who are unnecessarily harsh. But Prabhupada said, because saintly persons are not just tolerant, they're also merciful. See, we have to tolerate, as Krishna says, matra sparshas tukanteya sukha. I have to tolerate the non-permanent appearance and disappearance of happiness and distress, just like we have to tolerate the winter and summer. We cannot force summer to come tomorrow, and when summer is there, we cannot force cooler weather to come. We just have to tolerate. Make the right arrangements. If you're going out on a cold day like today, then you have to put on the right clothing. Similarly, in summer, you have to be prepared. So the Prabhupada was saying, we have to be tolerant, but we also have to be merciful. Because if the saintly persons are not merciful, then there is no hope for the ignorant people. There is no hope. They're simply digging a deeper and deeper hole, going further and further into hellish conditions. And we see that again on a daily basis here. Every one of us is experiencing the blazing fire of material existence, the ill effects of Kali Yuga, and we have to tolerate. Later on in the 12th canto, there's this nice verse, tatas-yācñāṁ dharma, tatyam socham samadama, kalena bhalina raja nangshatyahur balang spritihi. So in Kali Yuga, all of these things that are listed, they gradually go down. Tatas-yācñāṁ, that day by day, all of these things go down, sometimes rapidly. It's amazing. Those of us who are, from my age group, it's amazing how the public behavior of people has really drastically changed. Things that you wouldn't dream of doing, you would never see in public. When I was a child, it's routine nowadays. You go anywhere. I was in California for the last 30-something years. I just went for a nice japa walk down on the beach near the famous Santa Monica Pier. It has a Ferris wheel. You're famous, you may have seen in pictures. Broad daylight, and I'm just walking along chanting japa, and there was a couple under the pier doing what should not be done in public. So this is Kali Yuga. Tatas-yācñāṁ dharma. First thing that goes down is dharma, religious principles. People don't know what is real religion anymore. And therefore, as I think Tulsi mentioned in his class, that they accept irreligion to be religion and religion to be irreligion. And this is a fact. When somebody comes along and preaches prosperity religion, you follow this path and you will become prosperous. The line goes around the corner. Especially if they see that this person and his entourage, they're all driving big cars and they all have fancy suits, and if they think, well, I want to be like that, so let me go to that church. But even if it appears to be based on some traditional religious sect, ultimately, if the presentation is speculative, if it's not actually based on what's in the scriptures, like Tulsi actually did mention that verse from the 16th chapter, Yakshastra Vidam Utrija, that if you give up shastric principles, then nasasidding navapnoti, you don't get perfection, you don't get happiness, you don't get anything worthwhile, ultimately. In the beginning, it may seem like you're achieving these things. Like recently, one founder of a famous church here in America, well, at least famous to some people, well known to some people, called Grace Community Church. He passed away. And there is a big brouhaha in the news about the fact that he didn't respond the way some people would wanted him to respond when there was report of abuse within his church, especially abuse of women. So the excuse or the reason given was that he's a follower of what's called Calvinistic Christianity, where they think that everything that happens is done by God and you shouldn't interfere. Whatever situation a person is in, God put them there and you shouldn't interfere, even if they're being abused. But that's not Vedic culture. Vedic culture is that everyone ultimately should be protected by the king. Everybody should be under the king's protection, just like a responsible father protects his children, the king should protect the citizens. But special protection should be given to brahmanas, cows, old men, women, and children. Special protection. So this is Vedic culture, not that God has put them in that situation. If they're suffering, it's God's arrangement, I shouldn't interfere. No. Yes, there's karma, but that doesn't mean we should stand by and watch a hungry person and let a hungry person stay hungry. No. And we have prasadam, we feed them prasadam. We don't say it's your karma to be hungry, so stay hungry. Or it's your karma to be ignorant, so we won't give you this book. Remain ignorant. No. So here in this Veda, again, he's, instead of taking advantage of associating with saintly persons, these brahmanas, he is actually abusing them and disrespecting them. And that never turns out good. So, in this regard, I just wanted to recount from the Krishna book, Srimad Bhagavatam, the story of Maharaj Mriga, chapter 64, because it relates to this. Here, Vena is going to meet a terrible end because he's disrespectful. But the story of King Nriga teaches us that even if you're on the opposite side, you're a very, very dharmic, very respectful king, just one little mistake. So, as my dear God brother likes to say, Devamrita Maharaj, whenever he tells a story from the Krishna book, he likes to say, you may recall. So you may recall this story, how one day the princes of the Yadu dynasty, Samba, Pradyumna, Charu, Banu, they all went on a picnic near Dwarka. So they were out on this picnic and they felt thirsty. They went to a well, and in the well they saw this huge lizard. And they tried to rescue the lizard. Again, they didn't say, oh, it's God's arrangement, you're in this well, so stay there. They tried their best to rescue the lizard, but they couldn't. So when they went back to the palace, they told the story to Kṛṣṇa. And Kṛṣṇa went, he said, okay, I'll take care of it. Somebody's at the door, front door. So Kṛṣṇa said, I'll take. So with great ease, Prabhupada writes in the Kṛṣṇa book, Kṛṣṇa just extended his left hand and took this lizard out of the well. And immediately, the lizard assumed a brilliant form, beautifully decorated demigod. Now, sometimes when we hear that somebody is a demigod, we think immediately of Indra, Chandra, Varuna, like that. But there are 33 crores of demigods. So not all of them are major demigods like Indra or Chandra or Varuna. Most of them are minor demigods. They're living on the demigod level of this universe, but they don't have particular influence like these major demigods. Anyway, so he was turned into this brilliant person. And Lord Kṛṣṇa, of course, he knows everything. He's actually Trikalagya. This is another thing that I wanted to bring up, because in a recent class, Hansarupa's class, he was mentioning that story of the Mataji who had gone on a mountain to meditate, and then when she met Prabhupada, she had made a garland for him, and Prabhupada indicated by his interaction with her that he must have known her mentality, how she was searching for God in the wrong way. So Hansarupa happened to mention that, oh, but that's because Prabhupada is Trikalagya. But this has to be understood clearly. Trikalagya actually ultimately or means, technically, one who can see past, present, and future. Now, does that mean that the spiritual master knows everything in the past, knows everything that's going on now, and knows everything that will come in the future? No. No, we should understand clearly what Trikalagya means in relation to the servants of Kṛṣṇa. Kṛṣṇa himself is totally Trikalagya. He says it himself. Vedaham samatitani vartamani tavarjana bhavishyani chabhutani mang tu veda nakashana. He says, I know everything, past, present, and future, and I know everyone, but me nobody knows. So that is completely correct for Kṛṣṇa. But when we're dealing with the servants of Kṛṣṇa, the jivas, it doesn't mean that the jiva is on that same platform. They know everything that happened in the past, everything that's going on now, and everything that will happen in the future. So this topic was actually brought up to Prabhupada himself by our Jayadvaita Swami. He asked Prabhupada that we hear that the spiritual master is Trikalagya, that he knows everything, but we see that sometimes he makes mistakes. He can't remember a verse, like that. So Prabhupada said, no, you don't understand. Trikalagya doesn't mean, as we like to say, that the Guru knows how many windows are in the Empire State Building. No. What it means, Prabhupada explained to Jayadvaita, Das Brahmachari at the time, he hadn't taken sannyas yet. It means that he knows Kṛṣṇa and he knows the process of Kṛṣṇa consciousness. Because some people, misunderstanding that, they started to question, well, if Prabhupada was actually Trikalagya, how come he didn't know that some of his followers would fall down or become abusive, and why did he give them such positions, etc.? No, Trikalagya doesn't necessarily mean that you know everything about somebody. It means you know what Kṛṣṇa reveals within the heart, and because their heart is pure, they hear exactly what Kṛṣṇa is saying. When the heart is not pure, yes, the supersoul is in everybody's heart. Kṛṣṇa says that. But when the person is not pure, they either act on something that is not the right thing to act on, or they don't follow. That we say we have a conscience. We want to do something that's wrong, and the conscience is getting in the way. They say, no, don't do that. You know it's not right. So sometimes we don't listen to good advice from the supersoul, or sometimes we listen to, maybe we wouldn't say bad advice, but what we shouldn't follow. And therefore, everything that we think we're hearing internally has to be corroborated by Guru, Shastra, and Sadhu. So that, again, that Trikalagya has to be understood correctly. Not that Srila Prabhupada knew everything about everyone and knows how many windows are in the Empire State Building, how many snakes are in Florida. No, not that kind of level of knowledge. But the spiritual master knows Kṛṣṇa and the process of Kṛṣṇa consciousness. Sometimes, of course, Kṛṣṇa reveals to his pure devotees things that are amazing. Like Shordas Babaji Maharaj was famous for sitting down in Bengal, Calcutta, or wherever he was at the time, and sometimes he would shout out, "Hey, just see what this rascal is doing." And by hearing the story, the persons who were hearing could understand he's talking about somebody in Vrindavan. So he's sitting down in Calcutta, but because Krishna reveals to him in the heart what some rascal was doing in Vrindavan, he could say that. But that doesn't mean that at every moment he knew what everybody was doing everywhere. So we have to understand this Trikalagya in relationship with Guru and Jiva in general, that it's not on the level of Krishna. Anyway, back to the Nriga story. So, let me just put up a picture here. I have a picture of King Nriga. No, where is it? Where did I put it? Anyway, so I'll tell this story without the picture. I thought I had put a picture that I could put on the screen. So anyway, so Krishna, in this regard, he is actually Trikalagya. So he knew exactly what happened to Nriga, how he became a lizard, but he didn't tell the story himself. He said, "My dear demigod, if you don't mind, please tell us, if it's not like revealing a secret, please tell us what happened to you." So Nriga explained. King Nriga said that, "I am the son of Ikshvaku." Everybody has heard the name Ikshvaku, right? So who is Ikshvaku's father? No. Manu. And Manu's father is Vivasvan. And how do we know that? From the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Imam vivasate yogam proktavam Vivasvan mave praha manu ikshvakave bravit. So Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita to Vivasvan, who spoke to his son Manu, who spoke to his son Ikshvaku, and we presume that Ikshvaku passed on the knowledge to his son Nriga. Anyway, so he was a famous king, very famous for being charitably disposed, which kings are supposed to be. Kings are supposed to be charitably disposed. We know that from the description of Kshatriya's qualities. Dhanam Ishvara Bhavacha. Dhanam means charitable. They have to give in charity, not just collect and don't give, which is what this Nriga wanted to do. He wanted to stop sacrifice. He didn't want, not Nriga, Vena. So anyway, so King Nriga was relating the story that he was so charitably disposed. He said, I distributed in charity more cows than there's dust on this earth or stars in the sky. And he said, not just ordinary cows. Each of those cows were a young cow, had only given birth to one calf, and they had gold-plated horns and silver-plated hooves, and they were wearing silken robes, coverings. So like that, very valuable animals. And he gave to all the brahmanas in his jurisdiction such cows, but not just cows, whatever they needed, he would take care of. Give them a house. If they wanted to get married, he would find them a wife. Like that, he took care of the brahmanas in his jurisdiction in an exemplary way. And again, the modern so-called leaders can learn from the story of the attitude of King Nriga. That's how they should be charitably disposed, not just collect everything and keep it in government treasury to spend for themselves. However, this Nriga, he said, I made one mistake. I had given a brahmana a bunch of cows, and somehow or other one of those cows wandered back into my collection, and then I gave it again to another brahmana. So when the first brahmana saw that cow with the second brahmana, he said, that's my cow. The king gave it to me. And the second brahmana said, no, the king gave me this cow. And so they were fighting and arguing, and it came to the knowledge of the king, and then he came and he realized what happened. So he said, please forgive me. I didn't realize that this cow had come back, and therefore I gave it again. But I will give each of you 100,000 cows for this one cow. So please allow me to settle it up that way. But no, they were adamant. And so they were not pleased. And because they were not pleased, after he passed away from his body, he was brought to Yamaraj. And Yamaraj said, you have this little sin to account for, but you also have a lot of pious credits that will take you to the heavenly planets. What do you want first? Do you want to go to the heavenly planets and then later on suffer for this one mistake, or vice versa? So the king chose to suffer first and leave the huge amount of enjoyment for later on. So Yamar said, okay. So then he made him a lizard, and he was put into that well. Now, there are a lot of lessons to learn from this incident, but I'm just going to read a portion of, because very, very important things that Kṛṣṇa said about this. So after Nārada told him everything that was going on, then heavy stuff. Now listen to this. This is Kṛṣṇa speaking, so we should take it seriously. Let me just clear my throat, because there's a lot of heavy stuff being spoken here by Kṛṣṇa. Lord Kṛṣṇa continued, quote, "If some foolish king who is puffed up by his wealth, prestige, and power wants to usurp a Brahmana's property, he should be understood to be clearing his path to hell. He does not know how much he has to suffer for such an unwise act. If someone takes away the property of a very liberal Brahmana who is encumbered by a large dependent family, then such a usurper is put into the hell known as Kumbhipaka." If you want to know what is Kumbhipaka, look it up in the 5th canto. Not only is he put into this hell, but his family members also have to accept such a miserable condition of life. Imagine that. A king makes a mistake. Not only does he have to suffer, but his family members also. A person who takes away a Brahmana's property, whether it was originally given by him or by someone else, this is also to be understood. If you give something to a Brahmana and then you take it back, no. Kṛṣṇa is saying here, a person who takes away a Brahmana's property, whether it was originally given by him or by someone else, is condemned to live for at least 60,000 years as a miserable insect in stool. Just see how heavy. Kṛṣṇa is saying, so you have to take it seriously. It's not just somebody making up stuff. Kṛṣṇa is saying, if you take away a Brahmana's property, even if you gave it to that Brahmana originally, if you take it back, you have to spend 60,000 years as a miserable insect in stool. Therefore, I instruct you, all my boys and relatives present here, do not even by mistake take the possession of a Brahmana and thereby pollute your whole family. If someone even wishes, you don't actually do it, if someone even wishes to possess such property, let alone attempts to take it away by force, the duration of his life will be reduced. He will be defeated by his enemies, and after being bereft of his royal position, when he gives up his body, he will become a serpent, giving trouble to all other living entities. Such heavy reactions. My dear boys and relatives, I therefore advise you that even if a Brahmana becomes angry with you, listen to this carefully, because it applies to us. My dear boys and relatives, I therefore advise you that even if a Brahmana becomes angry with you and calls you by ill names or curses you, still you should not retaliate. Take this seriously, because sometimes we run into situations where we think we're not wrong, but still we have to tolerate. Do not retaliate. On the contrary, you should smile. Everybody, smile. Tolerate him and offer your respects to the Brahmana. You know very well that even I myself offer my obeisances to the Brahmanas. This is God speaking, Kṛṣṇa. So if God, Kṛṣṇa, offers obeisances to Brahmanas, what is our excuse that we can't offer obeisances to a Brahmana? I myself offer my obeisances to the Brahmanas with great respect 3 times daily. You should therefore follow my instruction and example. I shall not forgive anyone who does not follow them, and I shall punish him. You should learn from the example of King Nārada that even if someone unknowingly usurps the property of a Brahmana, he's put into a miserable condition of life. So Krishna's desire is quite clear, and the reaction for not following Krishna's advice is also being clearly stated here. So this relates to today's verse, because in today's verse it says that King Nārada disrespected the sages, didn't follow their advice, and therefore he was condemned. So here Krishna is pointing out that yes, you have to respect the Brahmanas, offer them respects 3 times daily like I do, and don't even wish to take away their property, even if it's something that you gave them. So these are some of the points that can be understood from today's verse and purport. If there's any discussion, any questions? Yes. Kanagopal Prabhu. Somebody bring the wireless mic, please, so they can hear on the internet.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu, what does it mean?
There's the picture that I wanted to put up.
Jai.
Yeah.
Prabhu, what does it mean to take the property of a Brahmana exactly? Because sometimes when we're familiar and close with the devotees, we may borrow something from them, and
you mean they borrow without permission?
And no, but they sometimes they let us borrow things,
okay,
and then we may borrow it, but it's not from a ill-intentioned place. It's not from a place of wanting to have it for one's own, so to say. And also, I was thinking of there's been a few times at the Harinam where somebody comes and they take money out of the donation box and they run away with it. It doesn't happen often, but it has happened before. And it's not even much. It's maybe like $5, $10 that's in there. And, initially the devotees, I noticed maybe they express some anger, but then usually they're very forgiving, and they even say, oh, well, he must have really needed it if he grabbed it and it was only $10. So what do you think Kṛṣṇa thinks of that situation where the devotees are forgiving of others' abuse, so to say?
All right, so the first point about borrowing. Borrowing means that you have the permission of the person that you're borrowing from. So there's no question of reaction in such a case. If you ask to borrow somebody's property and they agree that you can borrow it, then there's no problem. But just don't make the mistake of gradually or immediately thinking that now it belongs to you. The example I like to give is that I grew up here in New York, and I had a friend, actually a friend of a friend, who was very wealthy. And this person was so liberal, he told us, he lived upstate New York. We were here in New York City. He lived upstate New York. So he told us, I'm going away for the weekend, but if you guys want to come and hang out at my place for the weekend, you can do that. So we did. We drove up to his place, big mansion. But the thing I remember the most is that he had a classic Ferrari, and he left the keys in the car. So we were able to drive this Ferrari. It was the first time I ever drove a Ferrari. So I was thinking, this person is so liberal. He leaves all his valuable boy toys and it's, his whole mansion for us. Now, we had permission. Now, if over the weekend we started to think, well, I like this place. I'm going to stay here. This is now mine. And that would be sinful. That would be. So borrowing is okay, but don't make the mistake of then thinking that now it belongs to me. Now on the point about people taking money from the Harinam collection box. Don't allow that to happen. This is Krishna's money. The advice I give in such cases, in general, about money box, as soon as big bills are there, take them out. Only leave like dollar bills. Sometimes we think if we leave a big bill, it will induce people to give also big bills. But that's foolish. As soon as you see a 5, a 10, a 20, take it out. Put it in your pocket. Only leave dollar bills in the basket. That way, if this happens, if somebody grabs, they're not going to get very much. It's an error to think that, okay, then I'm just being forgiving. It's not your money in the first place, so there's no question of your forgiveness. The question is, will Kṛṣṇa forgive that person? One time, one of my godbrothers did something quite foolish, and then he foolishly said to Srila Prabhupada, oh, it must be Kṛṣṇa's mercy. And Prabhupada said, no, not Kṛṣṇa's mercy, your foolishness. So we have to be very careful when we're dealing with Kṛṣṇa's property, which is everything in this temple, everything that we think we own for ourselves, it's actually Kṛṣṇa's property. So we should be very careful. Don't allow people to come and snatch money like happened in Govinda's here. Don't leave a lot of money in a donation box, because it's not a question of if, it's a question of when some foolish person will try to grab it. So when you're on Harinam or at a book table, don't leave big bills in the basket. As soon as somebody puts in a 5 or a 10 or a 20, take it out and only leave dollar bills and coins. Is that okay? Anything else? Yes, Shri Gopal Pran, Prabhu.
When you were speaking about this story of the jackal, how he identified himself as the king, just getting the color. Same way we see there are a lot of people around who sometimes just wear the robe of a sadhu and they act in a way and fool the people around. So how should the general people be aware, that who is a genuine sadhu and not get carried away? We see sometimes in our society also, sometimes like people do this thing and then, it causes great amount of loss of faith among the devotees also. So
good question. So education is always required. We have to know what is a real sadhu. Sometimes even after taking to Krishna consciousness, we still think some guy with a long beard, and we still misidentify such a person as being a sadhu. I'll give you a practical example. In it was 2000 something, maybe 2004 or 6, I was in Zurich. I went to the temple in Zurich. I just arrived just in time for Bhagavatam class, Zurich, Switzerland. So I go in, and on the Vyāsa is some Indian guy with a long beard and long hair. And I'm wondering, who is this guy? I never saw him before. So anyway, I stayed for the rest of the class. And then after class, I asked the devotees, I'd like to meet this person. So they arranged for us to have breakfast together. And I asked, respectfully, inquired into his background. And he said, oh, well, I grew up in Vrindavan. I was a boy when Prabhupada was there, and Prabhupada blessed me, and this and that. He's not an initiated devotee in ISKCON, but he's traveling around ISKCON at that time he was. And foolish devotees were accepting this story that, he's from Vrindavan, he met Prabhupada when he was a boy, and he must have so much to share, and allowing him to sit on the Vyāsa and give class. So I told the temple president at the time, this is not correct. And I know many of the GBC members are my god brothers, god sisters, so I contacted and had them call the temple president and tell him not to do that again. And he, instead of being grateful, he was mad at me. You see, sometimes even when we take the Krishna consciousness, we're reading Prabhupada's books, we still get fooled by these so-called sadhus and yogis. And so by reading Bhagavad Gita, and especially by hearing Prabhupada's purports, we should understand who is a real sadhu. Prabhupada stated many times over. Sadhu ultimately means devotee. You have to be a devotee of Kṛṣṇa. You have to have the qualities to Tikshava Karunika, Suridam Savardehinam, Ajata Shatsura Shantam. Sadhava Sadhabhushana. Sadhu is actually ornamented with these good qualities: tolerance, mercifulness, non-enviousness, not seeing anyone as an enemy, like that. But ultimately, in our case, for somebody to come in this contemplative and give class, they have to be a Prabhupada Anuga, initiated by Prabhupada or by somebody initiated by Prabhupada. In this line, we see when Prabhupada was present, he didn't even allow his godbrothers to give class in ISKCON. Why? He said, because if they say one thing different from what I'm telling you, you'll be confused. So ultimately, in our line, we want to be strict followers of Srila Prabhupada. And anybody who's nominated to give class should be, again, either strictly following as a disciple of Prabhupada or a disciple of Prabhupada. Not that just anybody who comes and makes any claim and without checking out. And therefore, I suggested many years ago, and I don't think it has been done yet, because of that incident in Zurich and other incidents, I suggested that there should be an online database, especially of ISKCON sannyasis. Because anybody can put on sannyas besh and put on tilak and show up at some ISKCON temple. It has happened. And claim to be a sannyasi, and he gets the treatment of a sannyasi, but ultimately we find out that he's not a sannyasi, or at least not a sannyasi in good standing. So the sannyas ministry, they should put out a database, photograph, bio information of all ISKCON sannyasis who are in good standing. And if somebody's no longer in good standing, then they should be removed from that database. So that, because not every ISKCON center is so plugged in that they know everybody. Like big centers like this, New York, Los Angeles, yeah, we kind of tend to know who's who. But there's so many smaller ISKCON centers where they don't know. So there should be a database where you can immediately consult. Oh, you say that you're so-and-so Maharaj? Just give me a minute before I give you the room and the Mahaprasadam. Let me check the database. Is that okay? All right, it's almost 9. If there's nothing else, we'll stop here. Anything else? Rantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Shri Ekadashi Vrata ki jai. Hare Krishna.